I see the thumbs up. Can you guys hear me okay? I just saw where Jay-Z left, man. We've got a crowd here tonight. Jay-Z, huh? Oh wow. I'm John, recovered alcoholic. I'm so
Hi,
glad to
John.
be here. Uh, hey guys, so glad to be here tonight. My home group is the Grace Group out of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I'm coming to you from Louisiana today, and I got to tell you, um, when I was asked to do this, I typically like the idea of doing it, but I like one-on-one more than I do like doing this kind of stuff. So you guys, you guys are a bunch of beautiful people. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are big book aficionados and technicians. And I'm not going to teach you anything new today, but it's an honor and a privilege to be able to talk about the big book in step three. And I'm glad that I've been given specific instructions today about what I should cover. Um, just talking about my story is not really, great for me either. I typically go to either a treatment center on Sunday nights or a local jail, other wind up joints, so to speak, throughout the week. And it's really easy talking to those guys because they're not going anywhere. They're not there by choice. So they have to listen to me. So just being honest, I'm a little nervous talking with you guys, but look, I'm going to give this talk like I'm talking to a new guy. Hopefully you guys get something out of it. If you don't, that's okay as well. I'm completely cool with it. Next Tuesday, May the 2nd, I'll be coming up on 10 years for the second time. For the second time. And a lot of that ties into this third step, right? This third step. And I'm sure most of you here have had all sorts of experiences and growth surrounding the 12 steps. And so I'd like to not qualify myself, but to talk a little bit about how it was before coming to AA the first time and then driving into this third step and what that looks like today. Okay. So alcoholism, for some of you as well, probably it does run in my family. It's not rampant, but it's there. There are also some other isms going on. But definitely from the get, I've got the physical obsession and the physical allergy, excuse me, and the mental obsession. And then before that even happened, man, the spiritual malady was something that really had me knocked off, so to speak. There were some situations that happened growing up that definitely did not make me alcoholic. Lots of people go through lots of things and don't become alcoholic, right? So right around the age of 12 or 13, mother passes away. Great family, sister's not alcoholic, dad's not alcoholic. I began to seek relief through alcohol, right? Alcohol was a solution for me. And if I'm really tying that into the third step for me today, was I really need things to go my way to be okay. Can anybody relate to that? Right. But I didn't know that was my problem. And so I sought relief through alcohol. And around the age of 18, I'd had all the consequences that we have, suicide attempt, DUIs, loss of relationships. And I end up in a treatment center. They introduced me to AA. And so my first stint in Alcoholics Anonymous was a middle of the road type Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, there were lots of great people there, still are. And let me back up. Maybe I was just middle of the road. How about that? Maybe they weren't middle of the road. Maybe I was middle of the road. And I went through the steps, got some relief. I could really understand pages 60 to 63 from an intellectual standpoint that, I'm always thinking about me, right? But I wasn't convinced that I needed to do this stuff regularly. And I hadn't experienced it like I did later on, as you'll find out. And went through these steps one time, and then I needed to go live life because this was not something I wanted to spend a whole lot of time doing, right? So you're going to get a little bit of two different third steps for me. Got sober again in 2013 and stayed sober a few years, still sober, by the way, but this really took a different turn for me starting around 2016 up until the pandemic, like some of you have probably experienced. Um, Started getting involved with some more mainstream or big book type meetings. In 2020, I got introduced to my current sponsor, and we went through the book as it is that we're going through today. Had another spiritual experience, and got a new understanding of this third step. And looking back, can see where I was missing a lot of this third step. And so right now, if you go on all these different sites that Steve was talking about, or social platforms, dude, there's all sorts of great step 3 talks. I happen to be involved with one of them, luckily through a really good friend of mine. And man, we're posting all kind of stuff all the time. Great step 3 talks. So some of the stuff you're probably going to hear will be probably repetitive on that. We've heard it's been said before. It's easier to get an alcoholic to stop drinking, but it's even harder for them to quit playing God. And that's been my experience. I was able to get into sobriety, fear-based sobriety, get in there, work some steps, get some relief, but quit playing God's been a long journey for me. And to look back at my life of self-will, and how that's manifested in other areas of my life. So I assume you guys are right here on page 60 with me. I'm going to be coming to the book a good bit. If I start to go over, Steve or whoever's monitoring the meeting, please let me know. I've got 117 currently. But it says being convinced. We're at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that, and just what do we do? So number 1, I got to be convinced, right? Am I at step 3? Am I at step 3? Let me silence this. I'm sorry, guys. Well, it goes on to say the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So I'm thinking back, first time through the steps, sponsor that I had brought me through this information, and I could easily see where I was selfish and self-centered, thinking about me all the time. But because I had went to treatment and went to a few meetings and worked some steps, I thought that I would never drink again. So I never understood, or I never really got that, like, this deal is not going away. Like, I'm seeing life through my glasses, and that's something that I'll always have. And I need to continue to work these steps so that God can relieve me of the selfishness. But so I got to be convinced that I'm at step 3, and that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Well, I disagreed with that, because there were some things in my life that I was pretty successful at. I was successful at, growing up, academics, teaching myself how to play the guitar, all that kind of good stuff. So that was a hard sell for me. It wasn't until being sober again, 4, 5, 6 years, getting remarried to a wonderful woman, by the way, and we're married today, but also seeing that I'm having the same problems that I had before when I was married to a different woman, right? And now the only common denominator is me. So I start seeing some self-will there. It says, on that basis, we're almost always in collision with something or somebody, even though our motives are good. And that's true for me. So give you lots of prime examples. I thought marriage was that way for me. I thought that, if marriage was 50-50, my motive's good. I'm going to go in there and try to give you what you need. And then if I don't get what I need, then I get upset, as we're going to see here on some other portions of page 61. So I'm always in collision with something. What my mind tells me that life's supposed to be like, and what it actually is. And that's been true for a long time, with my mother passing away, with divorce, all the things, that we experience in alcoholism. But I need things to go my way. Crap. I need things to go my way for on a daily basis today, whether it be traffic going quickly for me. I'll give you one that happened to me this morning, guys. This is awesome. Okay. Get to work, checking my bank account, right? Because we got to make sure we got enough money to pay the bills, right? and I see where the check's a little bit short. Okay. And my first reaction is like, oh, shoot, somebody messed up. And my default setting is trying to point the finger. So through this program and the steps I've been taught, I was able to back off from that and get right and handle everything. But this is a prime example of me. I'm doing well as long as I'm getting what I want. It says most people try to live by self-propulsion. It doesn't just say me, it just says most people. So you're talking about most is a lot of folks. So everybody on this meeting, we're probably trying to live by self-propulsion. We're trying to live by, what we think life should be like. Each person's like an actor who wants to run the whole show. So actors aren't the directors, but consider yourself an actor. And I'm trying to tell the director who's probably been directing theater or movies for years how he needs to alter the script, how he needs to handle the set. It's nuts, right? I'm forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in my own way. That comes across, either on the telephone or texting. My default setting is how can I say something to get what I want, right? How can I get things to work out for me? If my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as Josh wished, the show would be great. And isn't that the truth? And most people are probably thinking, yeah, I need that kind of stuff to go my way. Nobody wants to go through pain. Nobody wants to go any kind of discomfort, any of that kind of stuff. But for us, or for me at least, I experienced that at a deeper level. If something doesn't go my way, I'm going to let you know about it, right? And as this paragraph goes on to say it, and depending on what kind of results I'm getting, that's going to dictate whether or not I'm going to give you a nice response or a pretty ugly response. It says everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. So I didn't want my mother to pass away. I didn't want to experience some negative situations with my children. I wanted that stuff to go well, and I wanted you to get what you wanted too. Nothing wrong with that. You do your job, I'll do mine. No room for human error, though, right? I'm not giving anybody any room for grace or to have any kind of situations where they mess up. And trying to make these arrangements are actually sometimes quite virtuous. Now, there are people from all over the world in this meeting, so you may not understand what I'm about to say, but you probably will. In the deep South, where I'm from, we like to smile and say, "Hey, y'all," and "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir." And that's just a different way of trying to get what you want. We have invented and perfected how to talk to you so that we can get what we want, right? And I was brought up that way. Always have good manners, always have good manners, and then you're more likely to be treated right. But if you don't treat me right, how dare you? How dare you? I use proper manners, How dare you not talk to me the way I talk to you? And man, my whole life has been permeated with that idea that if I will just do right, then everybody else will do right too. It's not the way it goes for us, right? So I might be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. I'm going to do all these things so I can have the outcome turn out like I want it to, right? But just wait. As soon as you don't do what I want, as soon as you don't talk to me the way I need you to talk to me, as soon as you don't look at me the way I need you to look at me, as soon as you don't fulfill your expectation, I can be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. And that's true today, guys. I'm not sitting here speaking for you and telling you that I'm walking on water. I promise you. What I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous over the years is that these steps are for us to stay sober and stay linked up with a higher power, right? So that I can remedy those things when I struggle with, and hopefully, at 10 years sober, I'm not as ugly as I was at 10 days sober as far as my behavior goes. But that guy can still come out, and being honest, if you talk to my wife or people that I work with, yeah, I can still fall into those categories if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to. This isn't a program of me being right or wrong or good or bad. It's a program of trying to stay linked up, it's trying to keep that conscious contact. So here's they're telling my story on 61. It says, what usually happens? The show doesn't come off very well. Rewind my life. My mama shouldn't have died. My grandmother shouldn't have died. My dad shouldn't have been chasing women. He should have been there with me, meeting all my needs. My sister shouldn't have been this way. Keep filling in the blank. What's your experience tell you? And I consciously, looking back, thought that. I didn't realize that some of the time, but I can remember being in a treatment center around 23 years ago, and a counselor saying, Josh, how long ago did your mom die? I said, well, about 8 years. And he said, well, why are you still living like that? He kind of took me aback. Great, wonderful, beautiful man, but I had been living in that way because I was, my mom had died, so it was like I get to do what I want, So anyway, the life's not treating me right. Life's not treating me right, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to act a fool. Okay, that's what we call it down south, act a fool. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. That's the exact feelings that I have. I decide to exert myself even more, and so today I find myself doing that sometimes. If you just talk to me in the right way, my wife or my kids or maybe even you guys on here, if you'll just give me the attention that I need, then I'll be okay. But when you don't give it to me on that next occasion, I get demanding or gracious, depending on what the case is. So this morning, back to the check being short, man, I got all mad. Like, how dare they make a mistake? Somebody's out to get me. Somebody's doing something. Can y'all relate to that? And was able to take some steps back and pray and go to God with it and handle it a little bit differently. But I noticed when my administrator walked by, I asked her to come into my office and talk to her for a minute, but I should have turned on that charm just like that. I still have it, guys. I turned on that charm. And because I had prayed, because I had tried to stay linked up, it worked. It worked itself out. But it's so wild to me that, even these days, I still have that default, like we talked about before. This isn't something that just completely goes away. It's something that if I keep working these steps, I'll keep getting good results. I don't ever just become less selfish on my own recognition. I didn't get pages 60 to 62. I thought that I could hear some good information, and then using my willpower, I could make it happen. All right. The play doesn't suit me. I admit I'm a little bit at fault, but I'm sure that you're more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. So think about your experience the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days. For those of you who are still human, still working some steps, think about the last time you were angry at somebody. Okay. Did you get angry at first? And then did you say, how could they do that to me? Right? How could they do that to me? And I don't realize I'm that way until I sit back and watch. And that's a whole nother talk. That's a whole nother 10-step talk, right? I love what what people who study this book teach me about these steps and all the little ins and outs of the steps of being able to watch and sit back. How could they treat me like that? I'm a nice guy. And then that kind of rolls into that self-pitying process, right? Well, I didn't get what I want. Woe is me. And then my behaviors start to reflect those feelings, right? And so, as we're going to see later on page 62, that's how myself shows up. When I don't get what I want, self shows up big time, right? All right. What's my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker, even when trying to be kind? I thought that I was a big people pleaser. I know you've probably heard this before. I thought that I was a big people pleaser. And there's some great literature out there, guys. I know this is, an AA meeting. There's some great literature for that kind of stuff out there. But for a guy like me, I need to go deeper than that. I need to go, what's the root of my troubles? Because I can only go around and try to make you do right for so long. I thought that I was a people pleaser, and that if I just please everybody. I can feel good. But the truth is, I'm selfish to the core. I can't handle it when people are upset at me or things aren't going my way. I can't handle how I feel on the inside. Those bedevilments, those, that anxiety, the depression, all that stuff um, rears its ugly head. And I don't want to be arrogant when I say, guys, like we go through some stuff. So I know there's some things that you guys go through. This is about me staying alive. So when I'm at step 3, it's not about me trying to hurt your feelings or hurt anybody's feelings. This is about no middle of the road solution. I need to stop drinking, right? I need to stop drinking. How do I do that? Getting into this 3rd step, looking at it from an entirely different point of view, is all these problems are coming from the inside. How I'm handling life, how I'm reacting to things. Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of the world if I only manage well? If only things will be like I want to, or want them to be, then I'll be okay. And looking back, coming back into AA for the 2nd time, and then going to lots and lots of meetings and not working 10, 11, 12 actively, not doing a whole lot of amends, not understanding this 3rd step. Life wasn't going great again, guys. I would change relationships. I would change jobs if I could, if my kids would just act right. And then I get remarried to a wonderful woman. She's sober in the program as well. Lots of great things in my life, but I'm still unhappy. I'm so still unhappy, right? I can't get right on the inside. And I identify with what this book tells me here, because I got to find a win-win in every situation to be okay. Yeah. And so moving on, is it not evident to the rest of the players that these are the things he wants? So if you're married to, or maybe you got a sponsee, or maybe it's even your sponsor, if you have a relationship with another alcoholic, isn't it evident to you when somebody's being selfish? You know what I'm saying? I'll get a text message from somebody, from sponsee, or my wife. Let me just tell myself, my wife, and she'll tell me something, and my first thoughts are, she's just kind of being selfish. Well, doesn't it take one to know one, right? It takes one to know one. So all these other people can see that I'm trying to manage everything to try to get my way, and getting my way might be a good thing. That's my justification anyway. Do not his actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? So I know that when I'm around somebody who I deem to be a little bit selfish, I start kind of pushing back a little bit. Well, they're not going to do that to me, And so I can only imagine in my life, well, I can't imagine that folks have been reacting to me, since I was a little kid. Before I even took a drink, the spiritual malady was on me. Before my mom died, all that stuff, for some reason, it was on me then. Okay. So even in my best moments, I'm a producer of confusion rather than harmony. And you can just look back at my behaviors. You can look back at my behaviors and how I show up with my family, how I show up with you guys. And I'll just be honest with you, these last 3 years, it's kind of been like that some. When I'm doing the deal, dude, I'm good. Everything can be falling all around me, and I'm great. But you let self creep in there some, and it does, and it has here a little bit lately. Self starts creeping in there, and it's disguised as something else. I start feeling a little bit sorry for myself, or maybe they're not recognizing my greatness. Right? All this stuff starts happening, and I start acting different. I start acting different from the Josh who's linked up to God, right? And then all this confusion starts. I'm like, what's going on with him? So that's how self shows up for me. When I'm not getting what I want, then self takes over, right? Or let me rephrase that. I don't always get what I want, period. A lot of the time I'm okay with that. Dave Fredrickson always says, what I want doesn't matter. What? When I was approached with that about 3 years ago, I thought to myself, that's kind of harsh, right? What I want doesn't matter. They're not saying that I'm not important. What it's saying is, if I want to stay sober forever and for good, one day at a time, linked up to God, I got to set my way off to the side. I love Bob D. says it better than anybody else. He said, how do you get your way? You give up your way, and that's me. So I'm like an actor who's self-centered, egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. It's all about me, guys. I'd like to say that I hadn't thought about this talk at all today, that I wasn't worried about it, or that I wasn't, thinking about it a little bit, but I was, I was a little bit, how am I going to come across all these big book thumpers on here? Those are the thoughts that come in my mind, those are the thoughts that come in. Self is showing up left and right. But because you guys have taught me and helped me identify what that was, I've been able to, go into prayer, ask God to help me, ask God to guide my thoughts and my actions. I'm like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. The minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century, politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. The outlaw safecracker who thinks society's wronged him, and the alcoholic who's lost all and is locked up. Whatever our protestations, are not most of us concerned with ourselves, our resentments, and our self-pity? I need to speed it up a little bit here, guys. That whole paragraph right there is me to a T. If you guys want to do good for me, I'll be okay. And again, I use the same example. My life materially really hasn't changed a whole lot in my life. I've always had everything that I needed, but depending on where you find me spiritually, I can find fault in everybody. I could probably go into every square that I'm looking at right now in all you beautiful people's lives and find something, find something that I don't like, right? Another speaker once said, it's like the 299 to 1 rule. I got 299 people that like me, one person that doesn't. Well, I'm like that when it comes to not being happy. You can give me everything that I want, but if you give me one little thing that I don't want, that's what I'm focusing on, right? I mean, if I'm in Florida, dude, I need to be focusing on the water and the beach and how beautiful it is, all that sort of stuff. But and I've been to Florida, once a year for the past 2 or 3 years, and I can find something that didn't go my way. Quick story, this was a couple of years ago. My family had not been able to take vacations for a while, and I've always wanted to be that guy that could take his family on a vacation, right? If I could just be that guy, I'd be okay. We go down there and we stay at a little nice place, and everything's going my way. Well, our condo's power goes out the night that I went and bought some crabs for everybody, right? So I could be the big guy and impress everybody. Perfect example. I was super mad, dude, super mad. But I was able to work these steps and get right and understand that things don't go my way all the time. So Josh needs things to go his way in order to be okay. If you ask me how I'm doing, I can come up with lots of ways that I'm not doing the way I want to do, right? I'm consumed with self. I can't get away from myself. I'm sick of myself. There's too much me between me, and I can't get away from me, period. So the book goes on to tell me right in here that alcohol is not my problem. It's not the root of my troubles. It's selfishness and self-centeredness. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows and retaliate. Let's look at that for a minute. So I've always been a fearful person, and not so much like I'm afraid of the dark, afraid of getting in a physical fight, afraid of taking risks, like going bungee jumping or skydiving. I love that stuff, but fear of me not getting what I want, fear of me not getting the things that I think that I should have. And I've heard people use this example before, but when I chose my first career or my first college degree, it was out of fear. It was out of fear. It wasn't like, oh, I could go do that and try something and maybe something awesome would happen. I knew that if I did this, I would get a specific result, and the result would be lower pay than what I could get if I took a risk, but it was a sure thing. And Josh is always about a sure thing, whether it was when I was drinking or whether, or was it real life, So fear is a driver in my life. Self-delusion, people are out to get me. When people are out to get me, I make choices that I shouldn't make. Self-seeking, me worried about me, I need to get what I need to be okay. Then there's the great one, self-pity. Isn't self-pity one of the best drugs around? Oh, woe is me, feels so good, so comfortable. But when you tell me that, I really don't want to hear it. And thank God for good sponsorship and men that I sponsor, because they help me see that. I can't sit around here and feel sorry for myself as long as I've got people that know how to tell the truth in my life. But these are the things that are dominating me. And a lot of times people retaliate to me when I get that way. Sometimes they hurt us seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that sometimes in the past we've made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Yeah. And so when I first heard that, I was like, well, when my mom died, I didn't do anything there. What happened? But working these steps and getting to know you guys and good sponsorship showed me that, that wasn't an issue. It was what I did with it after. I know I'm jumping a little bit forward with this 4-step, but I've made decisions based on self, based on that fear, self-pity, all those sorts of things that later caused me to be hurt. In the lineage that I'm sponsored in, and you guys are probably too, it's explained to me that, if my problems are always out here, then I'm screwed. Problems are coming from in here. Problems are coming from in here. And at first I was like, no, they're not. Things are happening to me. I could justify anything that's happening to me. I could justify anything that's happening to me. What I realized is I'm not able to handle calamity. I'm not able to handle this outside world, so I'm always retreating. So it says our troubles are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, just like we just talked about. And the alcoholic's an extreme example of self-will run riot, but I usually don't think so. And I'll convince you that my way is the right way. And I'll call you and I'll tell you, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I got going on. And then if it doesn't go my way, I'll call you and be like, look, this didn't go my way because of X, Y, Z, trying to get you to think that, that I'm not in self-will, right? But again, we're looking at this book here and this program here from a situation where I don't want to die. So I got to figure out a way how to get some relief. Above everything. It's pretty heavy, not right here in the middle, not right here, but above everything else. We alcoholics must be rid of this selfishness, good friend of mine out there, kind of where Steve's at, he'd always say, you got to give it away to get it, Josh. I always thought it was, I got to give it away to keep it. But he taught me, you got to give it away to get it. And that's what this is kind of telling me here is I said, I can't get rid of the selfishness on my own, but God makes that possible. God makes that possible. There often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without his aid. And that's the kicker for me, man. It's like, I grew up in a religious background and I always thought, all the stuff they were teaching there was great. I was like, dude, that's what I want to go do. I want to follow in the footsteps of those people. And I would set out to do it. And I would last about 3 or 4 days, and then the wheels would come off again. And so eventually I just stopped going because I couldn't do it. And what this book's telling me is like, Josh, you can confess and tell everybody all day long how selfish and self-centered that you are, but that's not going to change anything, dude. And so the part about me not understanding of what a real alcoholic was a real alcoholic was going to have this spiritual experience through these steps in order for God to help me with this selfishness. I had to do this work. I couldn't just get to the 3rd step and say, all right, cool, I'm selfish. Help me, God. I needed to keep going forward with the rest of the steps. Many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we couldn't live up to them, even though we would have liked to. Neither could we reduce our self-centeredness much by wishing or trying our own power. We had to have God's help. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear I had to have somebody else's help, right? This is the how and why. First of all, we had to quit playing God. Quit playing God and how I think about things, how I judge others. You name it, put it up there. Josh has showed up like he's God, okay? Had a really good sponsor one time, and we're still friends. I'd call him up with a problem, and he would say something like, well, Josh, when did you start playing God? Who made you God, right? And that's pretty much what I do. So we had to decide in this hereafter of drama of life that God was going to be the director. And so if God's the director, then when stuff happens that I don't like, I can be okay with it today. I'm not saying I don't get angry, just like I told you this morning. I'm not saying I don't have human emotions. That's ludicrous, but working these steps and being linked up to a power greater than myself, I don't get to write the script anymore. I never did anyway, but he's the director. He's the principal. We're his agents. All I got to go do is my job. And we're going to find out what that is here in just a minute. He is the father. We're his children. And we're not talking about earthly father. We're talking about a father in the sense that A good father loves and disciplines. Now, discipline doesn't mean whip with a belt. Discipline means to love and teach and guide, right? And we're the children. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of a new and triumphant arc to which we pass to freedom. So if I do those things, I can start getting some freedom, right? When we sincerely took such a position, I got about 10 more minutes. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. When we sincerely took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things follow. Now, this is where I need to really try to ask a lot of questions to a guy when I'm working with him. Because there's been times in the past where I haven't done that. We've had to come back and look at some things. And I'm not crazy enough to think that somebody's going to get all the implications of this third step right now the first time through. Maybe they do. I'm going to do my best here to do that. But when I sincerely take such a position, all sorts of remarkable things follow. I got a new employer. So if I'm not the employer, I don't have to worry about the details. I just need to do my job. Being all powerful, I'm sure you talked about the problem, lack of power, right? That's my dilemma. So this tells me that being all powerful, he, God, provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. So I love the way this has been put to me in sobriety. From today till they put me in the ground, till I move off to the next meeting in the sky, the only job I got right now is to try to carry the message and help other alcoholics, right? Try to work these steps. Now, when I was new, the first time I heard, well, I just got to be obsessed with AA 24/7, and then in my mind's like, well, you can't do that. You got a life to live, buddy. I didn't understand what this was telling me. When I do it like this, when I take this approach, God takes care of the rest. All I got to go do is say yes. Yes, my life's been full of no's. Well, no, I can't go do that. And that's going to get in the way of what I want. The more I say yes, the more God's able to come into my life, expel that selfishness and self-centeredness, and keep me away from me and help me stay linked up. And if I'm being honest, I've gotten most of all I've wanted living that way of life. I'm not a guy that's going to walk around here telling you all the material stuff that I've got, because God knows I don't have all the material stuff, but man, I live a life that I could never even imagine. At about a year sober, I got arrested. Whole another story. Lost everything. Year sober. Faced a lot of time in prison. And I'm thinking to myself, how can this be happening? This is not in the script. This is not in the script. And so I started thinking how I could rebuild my life, and I haven't been able to. But guess what? God's been able to. And how that's happened is I've thrown myself into this work. These third step promises right here are so important, and sometimes they get skipped over. It says established on such a footing. When I got a good footing, man, you can't move me, right? I need to make sure I'm planning. We became less and less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. It doesn't say overnight, it doesn't say immediately, it just says less and less. And hopefully the more I practice this, the more or less selfish I become. More and more we became interested in seeing what we could contribute to life. As we felt new power flow in, as we enjoyed peace of mind, as we discovered we could face life successfully, as we became conscious of his presence, we began to lose our fear of today, tomorrow, or the hereafter. We were reborn. Now that's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm coming in thinking, there ain't no way, man. I've got to worry about that stuff, or it won't get done. And it's been a long class for me to actually believe from my head to my heart that this has been true. And it took me going through that situation where I got arrested. It took me going through divorce. It took me doing all those things, seeing when I'm sober, not practicing the program, living on Josh's power, Josh's life, all this stuff happening. When I start practicing this, all the other stuff's gotten taken care of, right? And it goes on to say, well, now it's step 3, right? All that for step 3, right? I know Charlie P always says, which I love, he said, this portion of the book and how it works is the most read and least understood, and part of the book, and they take a long time going through this. And really, we could spend a long time talking about this, and I'm sure you guys have all sorts of things too that you could add in on here. I thought coming into AA, that I got sober so I could get what I wanted. And the truth is, that's not the case. I didn't know what I wanted. God gave me everything I needed plus some, right? Plus a lot more. What I wanted has changed. This prayer I sped through, did not understand, had great sponsorship, but didn't understand, didn't want to hear it. But let's go over it real quick. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. So, hey, buddy, whoever your God is, whatever you call him, he, she, it, or whatever you want to do with it, I'm yours. Do with me what you want, right? Relieve me of the bondage of self. Get Josh out of Josh so I can better do your job. And so my prayers have changed over the years. It used to be like, all right, God, help me get to work and not do this, and this. Now it's like, wake up. And I don't know about you guys, but when I wake up, Josh is the first thing I think about. And the anxiety or whatever else is there, it's there. And so I immediately, quickly go in my little spiritual place. So I've got a closet where I can go into my closet and I can say this prayer and I can meditate on this prayer so that I'm not worried about that crap anymore. Relieve me of me so I'm able to do your will. And I'm able to ask God, hey, dude, here's what I want over here, but let me ask you, what do you want today? Never occurred to me to ask God what he wanted. And maybe that's been my problem my entire life. I've been wanting what I wanted. And God, you get what you want. That's cool, but I need to get what I want. Take away my difficulties, not so that I can have happiness and joy and just everything go perfect. Take away my difficulties, that victory over those difficulties would be a witness to everybody of your power, right? Of your power. So I want to live my life in a way that other people can see, dang, I knew Josh before. I know what kind of guy he is. I know what he's been through. And I know he didn't do that. Something's going on, right? Thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. Help other people see all that stuff in me from you. May I do your will always. And then it goes on to say, we thought well before taking this step. I didn't think very well taking this step the first time. Maybe some of you guys did. But I like to go over this with a new guy coming through. Like, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. Now we're in this big book study right here. Again, that's different from me specifically taking somebody through this step a little bit, but we're talking about getting off the director's chair and letting somebody else do it. And when I'm new, I really don't know what that looks like. I just know I can't stop drinking. I can't manage those bedevilments. I can't not be anxious, depressed, so angry I could murder somebody. I can't fix all the past stuff. So I'm drinking over all that stuff, and I got that physical allergy. So I'm going to keep drinking and going through that cycle of addiction that Dr. Opinion talks about, right? I need some help. So if you're telling me to go do this step, then I'm going to go do it. And then I'm going to move forward and try to keep doing these steps so I can stay sober. I feel like I've sped through a little bit of stuff here, but this, I know that all the steps are important. I know you hear people say that, this is my favorite step or this is the one. Yeah, step one, I never got step one completely because I didn't work the rest of the program, right? I've got to be convinced first that, I'm a real alcoholic. But this step three here for me today is where it's at. When I've got a problem, which, it's because things aren't going my way, or I'm drifting in the past of things not going the way that I wanted to go then. And I need a divine intervention from God's understanding, by working these steps and by staying linked up. So what I want doesn't matter, right? What God wants is what matters. And I take that approach into my life, albeit very begrudgingly a lot of the time. Seriously. Look, I can remember when all, this COVID stuff started, I started a meeting with my home group thinking it was going to go a certain way. And it did not go the way that I wanted to go. And I was a little bit pissed off. But now my life has taken off like no other. I'm sitting here talking to you guys. I'm talking to people from all over the world who I never would have talked to had I not submitted myself to this program the way the book has it laid out. Not what Josh's opinion was, but the way you guys taught me. So for that, I'm truly grateful. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you for taking time out of your day and allowing me to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Hope to see you guys around. Thanks.